Fyre Festival, that disaster music festival that looked like a bad island camping trip after a hurricane?
There's mattresses all over the place getting soaked.
The save yourself mode kicked in.
Right, it's a free-for-all.
Well, that was a full-on scam, and its founder, Billy McFarland, went to jail and paid massive fines. And although the uproar went viral, spawning not one but 2 documentary films, it wasn't the first failed mega event of its kind. It had echoes of a festival that also fell apart just days before it was supposed to happen, in South Africa, in September 2014.
Tribe One Festival, man.
This inaugural Tribe One Dinokeng Music Festival.
It's hailed as Africa's largest and biggest music festival yet. I've got FOMO already.
I know. We're looking at about 150 artists, international artists, Nicki Minaj, Macklemore, J. Cole, Ryan Lewis. I mean, it is insane.
Tribe One Dinokeng promised to be the largest festival of all time on the continent, Glastonbury in Africa.
And this is all happening one weekend? Yo, it's for the whole weekend. Nicki Minaj, Baba. Yo, Anaconda era.
African debut.
Woo! Unlike Fyre Festival, Tribe One Dinokeng exploited tens of millions of rands in state resources. That money came from the city of Tshwane, one of South Africa's main metropoles. It's chronically cash-strapped and home to some of the country's poorest people. Tribe One's devastating failure received almost zero scrutiny. No one was held accountable. It was swept under the rug until earlier this year when a tranche of documents was leaked to Daily Maverick about what went wrong. The festival was the brainchild of South African music industry impresario Jandre Louw, who got his start doing events and marketing for MTV networks in Africa. He went on to start his own business called Rockstar 4000. Louw had already earned himself a less than salutary reputation in the industry by then, according to many sources. But he had a trump card. His best friend was the MD for Africa of Sony Music Entertainment, the world's second largest record label. His name is Sean Watson, and he backed the festival and his bestie 100%. In fact, he was the one who pitched it to Tshwane Mayor Kgosienso Ramokgopa and his team in early 2013, alongside Louw. At the time, the city happened to be looking for high-profile branding opportunities to boost international investment and tourism, so it seemed like a perfect fit. Watson and Louw pitched them a 3-day, 3-stage musical spectacular for 100,000 people in a place called Dinokeng outside Pretoria. They would market the festival in 15 countries abroad, selling a once-in-a-lifetime destination event with African and international artists and celebs. They pitched a range of accommodation options from stage-side rockstar pods with personal butlers to local B&Bs and hotels and camping for 30,000 people. Importantly for the city, they also pitched a youth and social development program called the Rockstar Academy. This, they said, would train local people and bring lots of jobs to a poverty-stricken area with a very high unemployment rate. All in, the project promised to transform the quote-unquote depressed and decaying region into a permanent musical mecca for the entire continent.
The case with regards to a concert of this magnitude in this area remains compelling. We are proceeding with it. Clearly, we are not proceeding with it this week.
As decision makers at the city of Tshwane told Daily Maverick, Sony's involvement and its global status were pitched hard. So nobody actually bothered to check if Sony or Rockstar 4000 had ever even come close to pulling off an event of this magnitude. Turns out, they hadn't. The deal to host the festival was inked in September 2013. The city agreed to use around 20 million rand in public resources to build the festival site. A further 25 million would go to Sony and Louw to make the festival happen as promised.
The city of Tshwane has defended the multi-million rand expenditure on infrastructure development. It says the 40 million rand is being used to bring much-needed services to this impoverished community that is situated only meters away from what was supposed to be the concert venue.
Inexplicably, the organizers gave themselves 1 year to pull this all off. The problems began pretty much straight away. Building a site to accommodate 100,000 people, even just for 3 days, is like building a small town. But the tract of land that was designated for the event is what's known as a greenfield site. That means there's nothing there. Everything had to be done from scratch. Sewage, electricity, Wi-Fi, land leveling, road grading, fence building, you name it. There were also sensitive wetlands and a burial site belonging to the local community in the area, so environmental and heritage assessments had to be done by law, but they never were. None of this seemed to concern Lowe and Watson at first. Lowe and Watson went ahead and organized a blowout launch party on the site in November 2013. Company executive Adam Granite even attended from London. That's when they found out that the land wasn't even the city's to allocate. It partially belonged to and was fully managed by a mine since the early 1900s, and they hadn't been consulted. So before any of that work could happen, that land ownership needed to be sorted out. And I think you're getting the hang of things here. It never was. By the time the electricity and water lines went in, it was July 2014. The festival was 3 months away. Luckily, Lowe and Watson had hired an experienced team headed by veteran operations manager Rian Jacobs. He and his colleagues got to work building the site from scratch in fewer than 12 weeks. But no amount of hard work by the team on the ground could fix the growing list of problems happening higher up the chain. The deal the Tshwane mayor's team ended up making with the mine for use of the land was complicated, and it was not approved by the city council, nor were the escalating costs that were getting tied into a knot of payments from different sectors, departments, and individuals within the administration. The finances were completely opaque, and they were being rushed through because of the tight deadline. Worse, in their contract with Sony and Lowe, the city had failed to put any financial best practice in place, so there was no oversight of what was being spent. They couldn't review or request audited financials, and they hadn't even put milestones in place for certain payments. But they went ahead anyway and paid Watson and Lowe the full 25 mil in 3 tranches.
We'll pursue our money. We'll pursue it. We'll leave no stone unturned to pursue the 25 million.
Councillors in the city's opposition benches tried to raise the alarm. In a letter to South Africa's Auditor General, they wrote, "This simply means monies appropriated from other public projects were utilised for the provision of infrastructure for this event." By early September, 2 separate but equally chaotic processes were unfolding. On one hand, the physical festival was being developed in Dinokeng by a growing group of experienced professionals and subcontractors. Some of them were paid deposits for jobs that were costing their small and medium enterprises a lot of money for things like stage infrastructure, gear, broadcasting equipment, and marketing materials. Artists had been booked too, and the headliners were allegedly paid millions of rands to appear, although it's never been possible to prove if they actually received the funds. But the festival's own booking agents on the ground later complained they had never had access to information about who had been booked, who had signed contracts, who'd been paid, or even what their own budgets were. They weren't the only ones who had no idea what was really going on, because, on the other hand, behind the scenes, the situation was breaking down rapidly. Time had run out, so organizers decided to downscale the festival from 3 stages to 1. So 350 artists were going to perform on 1 stage in 72 hours? The rationale and the strategy were not at all clear, and apparently neither Watson nor Lowe were attending any of the weekly meetings on site. There was no time left for the city to build much of the above-ground infrastructure, meaning Sony and Lowe would have to pay for temporary infrastructure. Big money they clearly didn't want to have to spend. Then there was the ticketing. Lowe and Watson told the city that they'd sold fewer than 4,000 tickets. What they didn't say was that it was far fewer. They'd sold 318. Later that day, both Lowe and Watson tried to get the city to give them more money. In text messages, Lowe wrote, "If ticket sales don't increase dramatically to the 30,000 tickets sold mark we discussed, then we are exposed by 35 million rand in cash flow shortfall this year. If Sony underwrites 15 million rand, will the city of Tshwane be able to underwrite the balance, 20 million? Watson cranked up the pressure, writing, "We have less than an hour to retain the international artists. Let me know if you need anything else from us." The city's Lindiwe Kwele wrote back, "But you don't expect us to just hand over 25 million rand without any authorization also. Fact, our justification for breaching MFMA by paying you guys all the 25 million rand was to ensure that artists are secured." That's when she inadvertently let slip that the project had breached the MFMA, the Municipal Finance Management Act. 9 days later, Sony, Watson and Lowe cancelled the contract, cancelled the artists, and walked away from Tribe One Dinokeng. Ironically, they blamed the city for lack of site preparedness.
Of course, the possibility still exists that we might be able to come to terms with the city about carrying on with this festival in the following year, next year, and the year thereafter, as was originally planned. But as things stand, there's currently no festival happening this week.
The industry professionals who had worked so hard to pull off an impossible feat lost a lot of money. Staff were immediately fired without their last month's pay, and businesses weren't compensated for their losses. Neither were the residents of Dinokeng, who'd been promised jobs and a huge economic boost to the area, and who had invested in upgrading their towns and settlements to welcome the 100,000 people and the celebrities who were coming to visit. Eugene Naidu and his wife Thrusini were sued by their subcontractor and had to pay them out of their own pocket. It took them 8 years. Rian Jacobs lost everything. Lo, who he considered his close friend, never spoke to him again. Sony and Lo's handling of the project was never subjected to any scrutiny. Sony made all its staff sign NDAs and banned them from ever talking about the festival again. Watson and Lo carried on as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, on the site, all of the infrastructure that had been built was rotting away and being stolen. In fact, in 2022, marketing for a new African music festival went up online. It was the same advertising that Eugene Naidu had commissioned for Tribe One Dinokeng and had never been paid for in full. Neither Sony nor Watson or Lo responded to requests for comment on this story, which you can read in full on Daily Maverick. But less than 2 hours after we reached out to Lo for an interview, the website for the Oasis One Festival had been taken down.